Good morning and welcome to this webinar on exploring sustainable clean cooking solutions using agricultural residues as a means to reduce emissions and protect ecosystems in Africa. My name is James Haselip and I work at the UNEP Copenhagen Climate Centre as an advisor on energy and climate. And here on the screen you can see the fellow presenters today for this webinar coming from Africa and Europe. And I will introduce them as we go along the webinar. So first slide, for those of you who don't know us, to briefly introduce the UNEP Copenhagen Climate Centre. We are a science-based advisory institution on energy, climate and sustainable development. We are about 70 staff coming from 25 different countries, working from our offices here in Copenhagen. And we're central to implementing UNEP's program of work on climate and energy and part of a new climate change division at UNEP. We have a steering committee sort of co-chaired by UNEP and also the Danish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, who provide us with about 30% of our project-based funding. And we have projects in about 60 countries, one of which is called SESA, the Smart Energy Solutions Project in Africa. And this is a collaboration between the European Union, an EU-funded project, and 9 African countries where we work to provide energy access technologies and business models that are easily replicable and can deliver solutions to support economic growth and development. And we do this through local partners and who run local living labs, where SESA facilitates the co-development and replication of energy access innovations. And these are applied to different sectors, including e-mobility, PV-powered irrigation, PV cooling, and storage of crops, mini-grids, and also clean cooking, which is the focus of this webinar. And the project has been running since 2021 and will conclude later next year. And on clean cooking, 2024 has been quite an important year. The IEA hosted a summit on clean cooking in Africa, where there was a very high-level push for this agenda and concluded with the mobilization of over $2 billion in pledges for clean cooking from various public and private sources, with a declaration that included this and other statements that this is a solvable development challenge that will have positive impacts on the lives of the millions of the poorest people on Earth, predominantly in sub-Saharan Africa. So it's really helped those of us who are working bottom up to get greater attention and hopefully resources to invest in this critical energy access agenda. But of course, in Copenhagen and UNEP, we emphasize the climate and environmental dimensions of these complex challenges. And when we look at the baseline situation for clean cooking and where biomass, solid biomass that is predominantly unsustainably harvested and combusted on open fires or very poor quality stoves, we can look at the high level numbers and how this is a driver of land degradation and deforestation, and equivalent to 2% of global CO2 emissions. So that is equivalent to, well, that's basically a gigaton, or equivalent to what is emitted by the aviation industry net. And in countries across Africa and also Asia, the household cooking accounts for as much as 80% of national black carbon emissions, which are also have a climate effect and are damaging for human health. And when we look at this as a climate mitigation agenda, of course, the mitigation potential of switching from unsustainable biomass to cleaner, more sustainable technologies can open up opportunities for carbon financing, and this can be monetized and used to help finance the cleaner technologies. So in our consultations and research, we see a potential of 2 to 4 tons per year of carbon mitigation across Africa against the average baseline situation. And so if we can generate high integrity carbon credits from cleaner solutions, then this could generate up to $160 per year in carbon financing, which over 5 years would be more than enough to pay the upfront capital cost of the higher tier solutions, especially the tier 4 and 5 superior clean technologies. So that's a huge opportunity for this space, and that's an angle that we're emphasizing in our work here at UNEP. And there's also a adaptation co-benefits to clean cooking. So not just avoided greenhouse emissions, but also reducing the reliance on biomass resources, which are increasingly scarce, has adaptation side benefits, resilience to climate shocks, and essentially getting it onto the climate action agenda, both mitigation and adaptation. We can do so by including this work in the NDCs, which most countries will be revising next year. And then that is also a means to access grant or concessional climate funds and financing that could either contribute to the complement the carbon financing or de-risk some of the commercial ventures in this space. So that's really the angle that we're coming to this with. In this final slide, I just wanted to highlight the human health impacts of dirty cooking, which in fact account for the majority of the economic externalities, which the World Bank calculate to be over $2 trillion. This is a huge impact. And this graphic, I think, is quite interesting because it overlays the 5-tier classification for clean cooking technologies in terms of household air pollution, which is measured as particulate matter, and what these means in terms of human health impacts, respiratory and heart disease, cancer, etc. And what I think is significant here is that these impacts are mostly non-linear, which is perhaps counterintuitive for the climate people such as ourselves, where greenhouse gas emissions and temperature rise are essentially linear. So in other words, the health impacts of clean cooking technologies are only realized really at the high end from tier 5 technologies, which is on the left-hand side, the dark green bar. And that would include gas combustion or gasification technologies, ethanol, and of course electricity. And I think it's important to bear this in mind and to see sustainable biomass technologies, which we're discussing today, as part of a broader clean energy transition, and that clean cooking isn't just an environmental or climate change agenda, but it also has major human health impacts with a strong gender bias. It's mostly women and children, in fact, that are affected. So mentioning that, and I think as a final slide here, I will end my presentation and hand over to the first speaker, Susanne Paulrud from RISE in Sweden, and who has 30 years of experience as an expert in biomass energy processing and energy conversion. And she will provide us with a run-through of the benefits and challenges of using agricultural residues as fuel for clean cooking. So with that, can I please hand over to Susan? Thank you very much.
Hello everyone, my name is Susanne Paulrud. I work as a senior researcher at RISE, Research Institute of Sweden. I have 30 years of experience working with biomass processing and energy conversion. Today I will talk about benefits and challenges using agricultural residues as fuel for clean cooking. So let's continue to talk about agricultural residues. In many countries over the world, cooking fuel still comes in the form of woody biomass collected directly from forest, of which some is converted into charcoal. However, there are more choices of biomass suitable for cooking. Biomass fuels beyond firewood and charcoal can be byproducts of agricultural production. Agricultural residues are generated in large volumes every season. Examples are residues of straw, stem, stalks, leaves, husks, shells from all sorts of crops. Unprocessed agro-waste is a voluminous biomass, which means its limited energy value per volume compared to firewood, and it can be costly to transport it long distances. Therefore, the use and processing is more relevant for communities that live close to where the biomass is produced. Since wood is limiting resource, these agro-waste products are becoming increasingly important when it comes to using more sustainable fuel for cooking. Using agricultural residues as cooking fuel also comes with both benefits and some challenges. Agricultural residues are often locally available and free of charge for farmers, or to a low cost in its natural state on the field. Since it is a waste product from food crops, it is more sustainable than cutting trees for firewood. The fuel quality differs some from firewood. Unprocessed, the biomass has lower energy density, which gives a shorter burning time. The biomass contains much more ash-forming substances than wood, which can affect emissions during combustions. A lot of ash in the cook stove can also wear down the equipment faster and reduces the durability of the stove. These factors depend on the shape of the fuel, type of stove, and the material of the stove. I will come back to that when talking about different cook stoves. However, the ash has also a value. It can be taken back to the field and used as plant nutrients. One solution to improve the quality is to process the biomass and press it into shape to get it more energy dense. I would say it's a necessary step to obtain an efficient combustion. There are several ways to process biomass. The process usually includes steps as drying, size reduction, and desiccation to briquettes and pellets. The biomass can also be carbonized or remain uncarbonized. But process to be chosen depends on several factors as type of biomass, availability of biomass, distance to raw material, and access to electricity. Usually pellet production is used for large-scale production due to more complicated and higher cost for the technology, and briquetting is more suitable for small-scale production close to the raw material. When it comes to processed biomass, it can be pressed to many different shapes depending on the technology. Most people are familiar with pellets, but when it comes to briquettes, there are big differences between size and shape depending on the briquetting technology. When the briquettes are used as fuel, right shape needs to be used to right cook stove. That leads us to different cook stoves used on the market. In rural areas in many countries, the traditional method of cooking over a three-stone fire is still very common. The three-stone fire is efficient and generates a lot of smoke and emissions. Other common use stoves are so-called fuel-efficient stoves, commonly referred to as improved cook stoves. These stoves have improved design features appropriate to burn biomass more efficiently. When used correctly, this leads to reduced use of biomass and amount of smoke. The third group is advanced cook stoves with increased airflow to increase combustion efficiency and reduce emissions. These stoves can, for example, have a fan powered by a battery to increase the air supply. Each type of the improved and advanced combustion cook stove has its own fuel requirements. Some use unpressed fuel wood and others require processed fuels in form of pellets. In general, an advanced technology with the demand to produce low emissions, the quality of the fuel gets more important. Using agricultural residues puts high demand on the technology because of the characteristics of the raw material. For example, high ash content demands a good supply of air to get a good combustion, and ash can also tear more on the material and parts needs to be replaced more often. Of the three stoves I just showed, the advanced stove usually falls under the definition of clean cooking stove. According to World Health Organization, the definition of clean stove needs to reach performance tier 4 and 5 for particle emissions and carbon monoxide emissions. If the stove don't reach this tier, it's considered as transitional technology. that need a performance tier 3 and 4. Technology that has a tier 0 to 2 is defined as a polluting technology. To measure the performance of the cooking stoves, there is testing standard. The standard provides protocols to test and report the particles and carbon monoxide emissions, thermal efficiency and safety of the cook stove in a lab setting. The test is voluntary, but Clean Cooking Alliance encourages manufacturers having their cook stoves evaluated. This will provide them with an understanding of how their product can perform, highlight key benefits, as well as understand how they compare to other cook stoves on the market. Testing data can also help manufacturers access new funding or new markets. The standard is rating cook stoves on 6 performance indicators. For each indicator, cook stoves are rated from tier 0, lowest, to tier 5, highest. As seen in the figure, the indicators are designed to be reported separately, as each is relevant for different impacts. Benefit with these performance tiers is that it puts pressure on the market to produce clean cook stoves. But a big challenge and barrier are the cost of these high tier stoves. As the picture illustrates to right, a stove with low tier has a cost from 0 to a couple of dollars. For an improved stove, the price could increase to $20. And for these stoves, the fuel cost is slightly lower since they are more efficient. But when it comes to advanced clean stoves, the price could be from $40 to $100 because of the more advanced technology. Also, the fuel is more expensive since a fuel as pellets and briquettes needs to be used. Many households in rural areas can't afford clean stoves without heavy price subsidy. So to my last slide, in summary, there is a big potential for developing a sustainable fuel supply chains with agricultural residues. A challenge is the characteristics of this raw material, a more demanding fuel. But wood is a limiting resource and it's not possible to produce wood pellets everywhere. Clean cooking stoves are too pricey for many households and a big barrier. And in many countries, I think the cheap transitional stoves will continue to play an important role. And with that, I will leave the word to the next speaker. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Susanne. That was a very interesting presentation where you introduced us to some of the fuel sources and how these have local environmental benefits, and also you highlighted the very important point that the right fuel has to be matched with the right stove, and then in doing so you ran through the tier system again, which I think is really important to have in our minds, and you also pointed to the limitations of the sustainable supply of traditional woody biomass, which includes charcoal, and so is this idea that agricultural residues have a role to play in the transition to higher tier net zero technologies, where the gold standard, of course, would be renewably powered electric cooking, and that may seem far off for most people, but perhaps not as far off as is often assumed. Okay, so our next speaker is Chikondi Khonje, who is General Manager and co-founder of Going Green, which is a Malawian female-led social impact company that produces cooking oil from sunflower seeds and biomass fuel briquettes. And she leads a team of 25 skilled professionals and coordinates 2,000 registered smallholder farmers under the company Going Green. Thank you so much, Chikondi, for being with us today, and over to you. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I hope you're all well. This is Chikondi from Malawi. I'll be talking about clean cooking with briquettes from sunflower stalks in Malawi. First, I'll give you a background of who we are as Going Green. We are the producers of sunflower crude oil. We produce briquettes using sunflower stalks from our farmers. We are committed to improving livelihoods and reducing environmental impact. We partnered with 5,000 farmers to create a circular economy. We work with farmers, training them on best agronomic practices, give them certified seed, and buy back their produce. We are the CESA partners in Malawi. We are found in Walilanji rural area. Walilanji has limited access to modern energy solutions, just like it is the case with all other rural areas in Malawi. Majority of the population rely on traditional cooking methods. There is high dependency on firewood, leading to deforestation and health-related issues. Agricultural activities provide raw materials for making of our briquettes. As you can see in the picture, that is the current situation in most rural areas in Malawi. The second cooking solution, apart from the 3-stone open fire, is simple stoves that are widely spread across the rural areas in the country. I should mention that 80% of the population in Malawi lives in the rural area, which means a higher percentage of the population in Malawi are cleaning using unsafe cooking methods and do not have or have very limited access to modern energy solutions. So what we would like to solve with the CESA project and also as Going Green in general is to reduce reliance on firewood to combat deforestation, address health risk from smoke inhalation, provide affordable, sustainable cooking solutions, empower farmers through raw material supply and income generation. Because some of the farmers are also our sales agents, but also we buy the sunflower stalks that we use to make briquettes, we buy from our contracted farmers. In terms of raw material and availability, we partnered with local farmers, like I mentioned, to supply sunflower stalks and sawdust. We are encouraging collection of agricultural waste to make briquettes. In this growing harvest for 2024-2025 growing season, our aim is to mobilize as many farmers to grow sunflower, because not all of our 5,000 farmers grow sunflower. Some of them grow sunflower, some grow soya, some grow groundnut. So we are mobilizing in between the 5,000, we want maybe half of that to grow sunflower in order for us to have a lot of sunflower stalks. Raw material availability is tied to seasonal harvest. That is why we introduced sawdust as an alternative biomass. There are opportunities to scale up with increased farmer participation, which now we are in the process of recruiting more sunflower farmers within our contracted farmers. In terms of selling and our customers, briquettes are sold through local sales agents that are into charcoal sales already. Our target customers are households, small businesses, and local institutions such as schools and hospitals. We've received positive feedback on briquettes performance, such as clear burn and lasting heat. Our aim with the selling is to reduce the sale of charcoal and to reduce the sale of firewood. That is why we had to use the same people who are selling charcoal and firewood. We had to recruit them into being our sales agents. So slowly we aim to really penetrate the market and see to it that there is less firewood that is being used in the communities. The challenge with that is that our current production capacity cannot allow us to meet the demand that we currently have. Our role in the project, in the CESA project, was to produce and assemble the MIG biocooker and also developing distribution networks to reach the remotest areas. We do this using our lead farmers who are scattered across the villages that surrounds the factory, but also selling briquettes and stoves while documenting user feedback, and participated in refining design based on user needs and experience that we collected. In the picture, you can see going green team during stove assembly. This was the time we were doing capacity building for going green assembly team. So some of the tools are locally available, such as welding equipment and metal parts. Specialized parts like fans require importation from neighboring countries. Our emphasis is on balancing local resources with imported materials while maintaining lower cost. Long-term validation of the stove, we are to continue testing with diverse user groups and biomass option, monitoring durability, performance, and user satisfaction, building trust through consistent result. We've met several challenges that we still have them up to now. The first thing is the stove is high price due to improved design and high performance. We aim to tackle this through exploring subsidy opportunities and partnership and complete local production, and to have complete local production right here in Malawi. Another challenge is limited awareness of stove benefits. Like I said, 80% of the population in Malawi lives in the rural areas where they have limited access to information, and knowledge in general is very limited. So we are increasing community demonstrations and education. We are doing this using, taking advantage of the farmer trainings that we conduct. So we've incorporated clean cooking messages into our training module so that each and every individual in the villages should be aware the importance of using the improved stove, but also safe source of biomass. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation. If there are any questions and comments, I'll be glad to address. Thank you.
Many thanks, Chikondi, for your presentation. It's great to learn about your company. And I can see that the success of the business model is, I guess, linked to the livelihoods approach that you've pursued, and linking the sunflower oil production to the energy provision through extracting value from the agricultural waste. And I guess you're building on an established sector, so presumably it's easier to involve or convince farmers to engage with this new commercial opportunity. I would be interested to understand what you see as the supply side limits to this technology, or the barriers to expanding the market, also in relation to Malawi's wider clean cooking strategy. So I think there's plenty to discuss in the Q&A. Okay, so our next speaker is Margaret Mansaray, who is the founder and CEO of Women in Energy Sierra Leone. This is a company that she established in 2019 to promote clean and sustainable energy solutions. And under Margaret's leadership, the company has become a key player in the renewable energy sector in Sierra Leone, offering innovative products and services, including the smart green stove and green briquettes, and also solar installations through their smart green services. And their aim is to reduce the environmental impact while improving the lives of women and marginalized communities in Sierra Leone. So many thanks for joining us today, Margaret. Over to you.
Hello everyone, my name is Margaret Yainkain Mansaray, and I am the founder and CEO of Women in Energy Sierra Leone. So Women in Energy Sierra Leone was initially started when I was in my second year in university, being the only female and the youngest in class. It was founded based on the fact that women and young girls are most vulnerable when it comes to energy poverty. So it's a whole social enterprise that creates a space for women and young girls, giving them a better alternative to clean energy, especially clean cooking energy, because there are so many solutions out there, but our focus is to find solutions that is interconnected, that they can have an easy, just energy transition, that is creating a platform for them that is as adaptable, materials that are accessible, affordable, reduce time poverty, and also help them to save more. So our vision is to see where clean cooking is accessible to all. And over the years, we have our market strategies, which is we learn, we engage, we experience. My team are made up of both old and young people that have experienced the same problem, and also we give our customer to experience to experience the experience of having access to clean cooking energy, from transitioning from firewood to a stove, a smart green stove, and briquette. And we have achieved that by distributing 3,000 stoves. We also train women and men, youth, to design their own stove. That is to help them to help them design their own stove, which they can use as a business as well. So we've empowered over 100 plus women out there that are now stove producers, and they can now sell to community that we cannot reach. So right across the district, because we've trained over 6 districts in Sierra Leone currently, and this 6 district includes stove producers, and we did this by working with NGOs, international partners, and also we've designed a smoking kilns for women fishmongers, because we noticed that they are inhaling excess smoke compared to cooking, especially women fishmongers that are into commercial business. So we help them design a smoking kiln that is smokeless, and also using saving about 40% of biomass fuel being used, and more efficient, reduce time, and can help them save 500 to $1,000 daily. About the local cooking practice in Sierra Leone. Initially, when we started, our focus was to the rural areas, but it's quite interesting where even in the rural and urban area, due to we have 72% of our population that depends on firewood, 27% of our population depends on charcoal. So it's quite interesting where even in the urban and rural areas, every household have different cooking options. They have for the urban, they have electric cooker, they have LPG, and also you can find them using charcoal daily. That is because the LPG and the electricity in the urban, electricity is not quite accessible, and also we're still suffering from electricity access in the city, and also for the LPG it's quite um, af- um, expensive, and for the rural area it's not accessible at all, and it's um, expensive for people that lives on $1 daily. And the current cooking methods open fire in rural areas, in both rural and urban areas, because people are still using open fires in the city, inefficient traditional stove. So moving through as an energy practitioner, I noticed there are so many stove producers right across that manufacture just this metallic cook stove, inefficient cook stove. So um, we have inefficient cook stove right across that is quite the same as cooking on an open fire, because it consume more charcoal, and also it emits smoke, as you can tell from the picture, and also these are women fishmongers drying their fish using the metallic stoves, and also they are using it to cook. And this problem um, can lead to indoor air pollutions, to environmental high deforestations, economic problem, because they are wasting more money to consume to daily, just to sell and also for the household. With a smart green stove, we have ensured that these products are made and locally designed, and they are durable, efficient, and they can reduce smoke emissions by 70%. And also, not just the stove, you can tell from the smoking kiln from the screen, that is that is as well reduce smoke up to 70%, and also help on fuel cost, which is the most important because it helps women having a total control about their money using in the house, and the total control about their energy usage. So about the smart green stove, it's made up from women and young girls everyday use because they involve in more harvesting. So we are converting their everyday use um agricultural waste, which is the coconut shells and palm kernel shells and sawdust, to help them have a clean, reliable, affordable charcoal that can help them to save huge amount of money monthly compared to what they spend on firewood daily. So combined impacts is safer kitchen, lower energy cost, reduce deforestation. So from the briquettes, like I stated, it's from agricultural waste, and the stove, they are all made from fibers as an insulator, ceramic as an insulator, and the metals are made from recycled metals. So this helps also have accessible materials and giving them more efficiency. So we have a clean cooking hub as well, which we have all these stove producers right across the district that we have trained. So we have trained over 100 plus stove producers right across the city, from producing tier 0 stove to now they are producing tier 2 stove, because our stoves have been tested, and the aim is to ensure that each and everyone in Sierra Leone and beyond have access to clean energy, like clean efficient cook stove, while transitioning to a better alternative. Um, that is the briquette. So we have a direct sales through marketing. We do a lot of community engagement. We have collaboration with women groups where we give them 10, where they are main distributors and they have 10% of the profits made. So we have a revenue from the training, capacity building trainings, from the sales of the briquettes and the stoves. Um, uh, Profits are reinvested into production, training, and expanding, because the goal is to expand within Liberia and Guinea, where we can use the same approach that is currently working in Sierra Leone, and using the same approach in Liberia and for Guinea as well, and other countries that might need our help. So partnership with NGOs, government, has greatly impacted our business in terms of experiencing, scaling, and expanding. Who so these are customer feedbacks. We are targets for low-income household in urban areas. That's a target, but fortunately, we also target for high-income earners household in urban areas, because, like I said earlier, every household in Freetown uses charcoal, and these are customer feedbacks, affordable pricing, training on efficient usage, continuously doing this testing of the stove. So every clean stove is a step towards a brighter, healthier future. Let's make it happen. And these are environmental benefits so far. That is 50 tons of wood saved annually from the briquette, significant reduction in CO2 emissions, and for the health, 70% reduction in indoor air solutions. Economic empowerment, we have so many women stove producers out there that have their own business now, saving more money. And also for household, every household now can save up to $20 monthly on fuel. Call to action: we are open to partner to scale up productions and distributions, because the market demand is still huge. We haven't fully reached our market demand yet. The aim is to reduce from 72% to reduce firewood usage to at least 30% of our population in the next 5 years. Uh, how can you help? A healthier, more sustainable future for Sierra Leone and beyond. Thank you so much. I'm open to questions. Thank you again.
Thank you, Margaret, for your presentation. You highlighted the gender impacts of unsustainable and dirty cooking and the day-to-day realities of cooking on open fires and unsustainable charcoal and its impacts. And you also mentioned some of the traditional financial barriers to accessing cleaner cooking technologies. And also beyond the technology of the sustainable briquettes that your company is producing, what I think stands out is the business model that you've developed and its success, which I suppose could be applied to any technology. So I'm sure you'll get some questions about that in the Q&A session. So thank you, Margaret. Now to our final speaker, Heli Sinkko, who is a program manager at the Special Funds Unit at Nefco, the Nordic Green Bank. Heli is managing the Modern Cooking Facility for Africa, which is a 61.5 million euro results-based financing program that supports market development and access to modern energy cooking solutions, including sustainable solid and liquid biofuels in 7 sub-Saharan African countries. So, Heli, over to you for the final presentation.
Good morning. My name is Heli Sinkko, and I work as Program Manager for the Modern Cooking Facility for Africa at Nefco. I am grateful for the opportunity to present the MCFA and our approach to increasing access to clean cooking solutions with sustainable fuels in Africa. First, a small introduction to Nefco, the Nordic Green Bank. We are an international financial institution owned by the 5 Nordic countries, with the only purpose of accelerating the green transition. At the moment, Nefco manages some 30 funds related to energy, environment and climate, with a total value of some 450 million euros. Our own capital is currently about 50 million euros. We have a portfolio of over 600 small and medium-sized private and public projects spread across different sectors in over 60 countries. And finally, Nefco's fund management activities fulfill both the European Union's as well as the Green Climate Fund's fiduciary standards. The Modern Cooking Facility for Africa is a results-based financing program accelerating access to modern and affordable cooking solutions for consumers in sub-Saharan Africa. The program is a co-creation between Nefco and Sweden, but since its launch in 2022, it has grown into a multi-donor program. Today, the total funding amounts to 62 million euros, coming from Sweden, the European Union, and Norway. MCFA's approach is really focused on incentivizing the private sector to sell so-called clean cooking services to their customers. Our investees can be located in now 7 project countries, including the DRC, Kenya, Malawi, Mozambique, Tanzania, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. Our ticket sizes vary between 500,000 and 2.5 million euros. Up to 30 or 50% of the total MCFA funding requested can be disbursed as a non-recoverable upfront grant against business development milestones, but the rest of the funding is always paid as results-based financing against achieved and verified provision of clean cooking services. The incentive level per clean cooking service is defined during the calls for proposals through a so-called reverse auction mechanism. Applications are assessed based on the quality of the business plan, and then a price component, which together represent the value for money offered. We also offer technical assistance to our investees on various topics, including business development, gender inclusion, ESG compliance, and access to carbon finance. As of today, we have contracted 13 companies, approved 1, and have 12 companies shortlisted from the second call for proposals in various stages of due diligence. Together, these companies will deploy 1.65 million clean cooking services in 6 project countries and expect to provide access to clean cooking to over 7 million people. And once the second batch of companies has been contracted, we will have allocated over 44 million euros in funding. The name of the program tells what the focus is: modern, higher-tier cooking solutions. This includes stoves using sustainable solid or liquid biofuels, but also electric and solar cooking, biogas solutions such as biodigesters, and LPG. We take quality quite seriously, and stoves incentivized by the MCFA must meet Tier 4 or 5 ratings for thermal efficiency, emissions, and safety based on the latest ISO standard for clean cooking solutions. Gasifiers or forced-drive rocket stoves that use sustainable briquettes or pellets are required to meet minimum Tier 3 ratings for these same metrics. And to verify that we are really incentivizing higher tier technologies, the stoves need to be tested during the final application stage, including with the fuel the stove is intended to be used with. MCFA's approach to sustainable biofuels is quite straightforward. We don't incentivize only stove sales, but the fuel must be provided either through simple identification or an integrated tool and fuel model. In the tool and fuel model, the fuel must be sold by the MCFA investee company or its consortium member, and in this case, the MCFA funding can also be used to cover investments in the fuel value chain in addition to the stove. The fuel is to be made available to end customers 80 or 95% of the time, depending on the fuel distribution model, and this is verified on a yearly basis by our independent verification agent based on a sample. Our overall monitoring approach is based on long-term sustainability. The incentive is earned based on end customers' usage, and since these rather expensive clean cooking services are often sold in installments or through a fuel subscription model, we use end customers' payments as proxy for usage. Finally, a couple of examples of our portfolio companies whose business models are based on sales of fuels produced from agricultural waste. The first one is a rather recent addition to our portfolio, ACE Hybrid Energy Kenya, which is known for their operations in Cambodia, Lesotho, and Uganda. With MCFA funding, ACE will expand its business to the western coast of Kenya and will sell ACE one gasifier stoves of its own design together with briquettes made of sugarcane bagasse. The stove can be integrated also with a solar panel for lighting and phone charging, so it is quite attractive also in off-grid contexts. ACE will sell the stove and fuels using a flexible microloan with 6 to 15 months tenure and zero interest. With the 1.3 million euros of funding from MCFA, ACE aims to deploy 13,000 clean cooking services, providing 650,000 people with access to clean cooking. A second portfolio company is Better Cooking Company, known as EcoSafi, that is expanding its operations also in Kenya. EcoSafi will provide the clean cooking services to their end customers using a subscription-based model, where the customers pay a small deposit for the stove and commit to purchasing pellets made of sugarcane bagasse on a monthly basis. With the 1.5 million euros of MCFA funding, EcoSafi will deploy 25,000 clean cooking services, providing access to clean cooking for up to 125,000 people. The last example from our portfolio is Emerging Cooking Solutions, better known as Supamoto in Zambia. ECS is providing Mimimoto and Supamoto gasifiers to their end customers against a small deposit, together with Supamoto pellets of their own production. The pellets are currently made of forestry industry residues, but ECS has plans to expand to use other agricultural waste as raw materials for the pellets. With the 2 million euros of funding, ECS is planning to establish almost 29,000 clean cooking services in Zambia, providing access to over 140,000 people in the country. Thank you very much. If you have any follow-up questions after this webinar, feel free to reach out to me, heli.sinkko@nefco.int. Look forward to questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Heli, for your presentation. Fantastic to hear the criteria for your funds and some of the modalities you have for investing in clean cooking companies in Africa. Really good. So we've had quite a few questions coming in from the audience. So I will just jump straight into those. If I could ask the panelists to turn on their cameras and microphones, or cameras for now, so that the audience can see everyone live. So the first question was directed to Susanne, and this was about the nutrient recycling. So are farmers not using the agricultural residues already to recycle nutrient back to the fields? So I suppose it's a question about the trade-offs between the natural balance of nutrient cycle and taking that away to supply an energy market. So Susanne, or anyone, but I think it was directed to Susanne. If you're able to jump in and answer that question, please do.
Of course, there is a balance how much biomass you can take off the field. Usually, you may leave some of the biomass because it's needed for the soil, but then you also could use the ash, because then the nutrients will be concentrated in the ash. So that's a way to compensate that you take off the biomass.
Right, thank you. And is it possible, and this is, I guess, my personal follow-up question, is there a rule of thumb on how what percentage of extraction you can do sustainably in terms of without upsetting the nutrient balance? Is that known?
No, I think that depends on what crop we're talking of, and of course, agricultural residues is not just that you're taking. I mean, if you have groundnut shells, then it's something else. Then it's not affected the soil as much as if you take sunflower stalks. So it's very different from crop to crop.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Susanne. I think that was a very good question. And actually, the same person submitted a second question, which was partially answered, I think, by the presentations from Chikondi and Margaret. But I think it's worth posing, and it's really about examples of locally or community produced cook stoves that have reached tier 4 or 5, and Heli made clear that that's the segment that the technology they're targeting in their portfolio. So are there any examples of locally built stoves that reach that higher performance tiers? And maybe I could direct that question to either Margaret or Chikondi, if one of you can jump in on that one. Maybe Margaret, if I can choose somebody.
For Sierra Leone, we don't have any gasifiers stove produced locally here because the access to materials is very difficult and expensive, and people are not willing to buy those products because of affordability. And we're in a population where almost 99% of our population from Sierra Leone are energy illiterate. So having those tier 3 to tier 4 stove, considering the materials you are using to make those stove, it can be adaptable if we use different approach, like having a well supply chain, giving easy access to have materials, and maybe have a partnership with technology providers from abroad, because we don't have locally manufactured here in Sierra Leone. See how they can have a capacity building that we can upgrade to that standard, and not just that, try to use different approach that can be adaptable for people to use them, rather than having access to them and then being or them using it just as furniture, because we have different cooking methods for Sierra Leone. Our culture is different. We have different food that can take up to like 3 to 4 hours boiling. That is beans and cassava and rice. So if we're looking at that, and most of our families are from expanded family, so as well we have to look into stove that can take bigger pots, for example. So having a gasifier stove that can take a bigger pot, and also see how they can adapt into this technology, because it's extremely new. The only thing, we have tried the use of e-cooking in Sierra Leone. The problem was access to electricity. We have lower voltage that can blow up the EPC, and they don't have money to buy another one. And for the LPG, they're working on different approach. Like we have different loans that people can see how they can take the gas on loans and be paying by installments. But in as much as well, they are just using it as furniture. So it's a way of having a partnership with these technologies producers across, and see how we can help us have like accessible materials within Sierra Leone, make use of what we can easily access to, and working with government to be flexible with the policies and see how we can use different approach learning that we can adapt to, because there's a whole different dimension or transition in Sierra Leone.
Thank you, Margaret. That's a very comprehensive answer, and actually, you've kind of also answered another question that came in that was basically about how do we achieve the transition from tier 2, 3 traditional biomass improved stoves to the tier 4, 5 solutions. You know, what needs to happen or what needs to change in order to do that, and so I think you've actually answered some of those questions. But given that that was put to everyone, maybe Chikondi, would you like to add something to what Margaret has already mentioned on barriers to the transition to higher tier solutions?
I think in Malawi, the tier 5 stoves are not commonly available. The reason being issues of affordability, because in the rural setting, most people cannot afford. And I think to overcome this challenge, there is need for proper and exploring some partnerships in terms of subsidies, and also like programs with the public institutions that can fund the production and the testing of the stoves, so that the rural communities should have those improved stoves. Thank you.
Thanks, Chikondi. And for your experience in Malawi, there was a question about engaging the farmers in the provision of waste for energy, and whether that was a difficult thing to do, or whether they were quite convinced from the beginning. And what would you see as the barriers for scaling that supply side up for the agricultural waste?
I think engaging farmers in providing us with the agri-waste wasn't really an easy task, because like you know, in most African countries, agri-waste is used for manure. So to give them that mindset change to say we can use this agri-waste in making of the briquettes wasn't something which was very easy. But we are still in the process of engaging our smallholder farmers through the training that we're doing. But also another challenge for us is the transportation cost, the high transportation cost, because our farmers are widely spread. So to collect each and every farmer's briquettes tends to be very challenging. And in terms of the barriers to success, in our case, as Going Green, we have a low machinery capacity, so we cannot meet the demand. There is high demand for our briquettes because I guess it's a new product on the market, and in the region where we're operating, briquette is something which is new. So a lot of people wish to try, but we're unable to meet the demand. But also another barrier that we're facing is the high initial investment cost in setting up the briquetting unit. This comes because in Malawi we are having challenges with forex, so it is almost impossible to order anything from outside Malawi unless maybe you are involved, let's say, in a grant, and then an organization outside actually buys you. But on our own as a business, even if we can have the Malawi kwacha, we cannot order anything from outside. In Malawi, there are no companies that are doing or manufacturing improved improved briquetting machinery. But also, maybe the last barrier that I can say is the high competition in the cost itself, because most rural settings do not think about the importance of the product. The first thing that comes to their mind is how much does it cost. Affordability is an issue in most briquetting businesses. So I would say those are the main barriers and challenges that we are facing as a business. Thank you.
Thanks, Chikondi. That's really good to know. And actually, there's a lot of interest in understanding this technology for replication. Somebody has just asked the question, would the slides be available? Yes, we always get that question. The recording of this webinar will be on our YouTube channel, so you can go back and stop and take notes. It's a sort of a knowledge product in that sense. This person is asking it because they are soon starting a project in the Congo Basin, so that could be of interest and some inter-Africa learning going on there. So that's great. Maybe zooming out a little bit, and if I can go back to Susanne and ask a question about in the bigger picture, the role of agricultural waste as a feedstock for clean cooking to 2030, and is this just a sort of supply side niche and a transition fuel on the path to electrification, or can it realistically become a major supplier of tier 4 biomass-based solutions? I mean, if we can zoom out a little bit and reflect on that bigger question, what are your immediate thoughts, Susanne?
Well, I would say that at most solid biomass agricultural waste as well as wood waste is a transition fuel for cooking on the path to use electrical stoves and gas stoves. But the world is not on track to achieve clean cooking for all by 2030. So there is a need to increase the use of sustainable biomass, both processed agro waste but also wood waste, together with high-tier stoves like 4+ stoves, but also improved cooking stoves like 3+ stoves. So there is not one solution. It depends on local conditions and cooking poverty. But I think there's a potential for more local production plants doing briquettes and pellets as the examples we have heard about today.
Thanks. And if I could myself ask a follow-up question, just in terms of the what needs to change, is the responsibility with governments to put in the right incentives and regulations to enable investment, or is it more on the donors? Is it more on the private sector? Who should be driving this forward? And if it's a mix, then where is the initiative coming from? Where should it come from?
Well, I mean, the affordability is a big problem. So of course, funding is needed if we're going to increase the use of clean cooking stoves. That's the only way that I can see it in many countries.
Yes, the financial barriers have been, mentioned by everyone on this webinar. So that's a good segue to maybe point a question to Heli and the fund that she's working with, Nefco fund. And the question here is thinking again more broadly about SDG 7 clean cooking targets and the NDC, so that's the climate action agenda. How significant do you think carbon financing will be for Africa, and what challenges does this create for biomass fuels derived from agricultural wastes? Heli, if we can invite you to attempt an answer for that.
Thanks. Very good question and a broad question. Well, I think in general, the role of carbon finance for this sector will be significant. We think at MCFA that it's the most important source of private financing, which the sector desperately needs at the moment or in the foreseeable future, just to even try to reach the SDG 7 on clean cooking. At MCFA, we are supportive, but a bit cautious about carbon financing, and the caution is really related to companies being over-reliant on carbon. So we are, on the other hand, putting much more pressure or support for establishing a business on a sustainable commercial basis, and then treating the carbon finance as icing on the cake rather than the fundamentals of the business. Because this is related to the specific challenges that apply to all technologies, but also to the to the sustainable biomass stoves. Kind of, it's developing a project or a program of activities requires specific technical skills to be able to navigate the standards and methodologies, the registration, monitoring and verification that come along with this project development, and also the related financial sources. So we know all that the carbon finance has a bit of a lack of confidence in the markets at the moment, in the projects. There's a lack of integrity, and this needs to be increased through more kind of realistic baselines, realistic and conservative value of the fraction of non-renewable biomass that has been in the older methodologies quite large. And then this all can be mitigated also for sustainable biomass stoves through stove use monitoring using the newest methodologies that leverage on metering and of the actual usage or fuel sales, and these are all available. But all this needs upfront financing before the carbon revenues come in, and the markets are volatile out there. So there is a little outlook on how the pricing is. Not all companies can get that $40 per credit at the end of the day.
Thank you, Heli, and I think you've covered a lot there in that answer, and actually it also addresses to some extent a question that was put, actually it was addressed to me, but I think you're better qualified to answer in any case. But it was one of the points that I raised in my opening presentation about the potential of carbon and selling the high quality credits for up to $40, which you just quoted then. And they're asking, could we share a reference for that price? And they're saying that the most they've seen is around $5. So yeah, it's a good question. Just to clarify where our numbers are coming from, that's from the study we published with the World Food Programme and other partners early in the year ahead of the IEA summit. And that was on a study for renewably powered e-cooking, solar e-cooking. So, you know, in the voluntary market, there is a willingness to pay, and that's the main determinant and as you said, Heli, it's dependent on high quality digital MRV systems, and e-cooking is quite conducive for that, and that's why we're quite enthusiastic about the potential disruption caused by low-cost PV battery-supported systems in Africa. And that transition may happen faster than we assume, but you know, obviously we're not there yet. And I think Chikondi and Margaret have raised, you know, reminded us of the day-to-day realities, right? And so we need to be imaginative in how we bridge that gap or that transition. And I think, yeah, you mentioned Heli, you mentioned about the metered monitoring methodology and how that's going to be the new standard to go by. What challenges does that pose for biomass technologies? I mean, you know, it's obviously, as you say, the confidence has been damaged, and I think partly from the overcrediting scandal that was reported earlier this year. You know, is that a death knell for these technologies, or is there a way to recover? And what is Nefco doing to support those, you know, the biomass-based companies that you presented?
So I think, for example, there is no technology barrier. There are quite cost-efficient stove use monitors that can be attached also to gasifiers. So it doesn't need to be a fancy IoT monitoring system like, for example, EPCs have. And it doesn't need to be remote real-time monitoring either. It can be based on a certain sample, depending on the methodology, what they require, and then gathering this data. But of course, it is labor intensive, so someone needs to go and gather the data from the stoves. But absolutely, technology barrier is not there. What MCFA is doing, so we are advancing technical assistance to our investee companies who have not yet developed their carbon projects. So this is advisory on seeking the best standard, best methodology, what they need to do, basically funding a feasibility study, and then we can also advance funds for developing project design document and for registration costs. So the support is there. But we have also some caution, if that's mentioned.
Thank you, Heli. That's really good to know. I'm also curious because two of the companies that you presented, ACE and EcoSafi, are members of the Solar Electric Cooking Partnership, SOLCO, which is something we're helping to push forward. Because of the solar powered fans for the gasified technology. So it's a bit of a sort of stretch in the definition of solar e-cooking, but it's there. And I think we would very much be interested in a follow-up conversation with partners to SOLCO with Nefco, and how we can sort of support those private sector partners to SOLCO and overcoming some of the barriers that have been discussed today. It's such a rich topic and so much to go through. We've only really scratched the surface, and we've also gone over time. We were supposed to finish at 11 o'clock Central European time, so we've gone over already. I think if it's okay with everyone on the call, we'll wrap it up here, and then invite audience members, and all the panelists, of course, are in touch with each other to send follow-up questions or reach out for a follow-up call bilaterally or multilaterally, if I can say that. Thank you again for your presentations to the panelists, and we'll follow up with a message to share a link to the recording. And I think with that, we can wrap it up. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a nice day.